Hi, I'm Leah and welcome to the Not Only Carrots cooking show. Today I'll be cooking for you the carrot rice loaf from page 32 of my brand new cookbook. No, we don't only eat carrots, plant-based food for humans. To start off with, you'll need a blender or a Thermomix. We'll be combining 2 cups of oat milk along with 1 cup of natural peanut butter, which is 100% roasted peanuts. So we'll get our Thermomix turned on. You'll be blending that in your regular blender until it is smooth and creamy. And in the Thermomix, it will be speed 7, if I can get the peanut butter out. Speed 7 for 7 seconds. Okay. This is some sticky stuff. Doesn't want to come off. All right. There we go. So 7 seconds, speed 7 in the Thermomix. Make sure you put your measuring cap on or you get splattered. Now we will combine our creamy peanut mixture along with 4 cups of grated carrot and 2 cups of already cooked rice. Make sure you've got a pretty big mixing bowl for this. And this, of course, is where we get our title of our recipe, the carrot rice loaf. I cooked this earlier today. Whoa. A little tip about cooking brown rice. This is brown rice, not white rice. Brown rice takes a lot longer than white rice to prepare. So I find it handy to put a pot on even around breakfast time so it's cooked and I don't have to think about it when it's lunchtime and I think, oh no, I forgot to make rice. I'm already good to go. So it can be handy to cook it early. All right, put that in there. The other tip with rice, with brown rice, is you need to add extra water to it compared to white rice. White rice is roughly 2 cups of uncooked rice with 2 cups of water and maybe a pinch of salt. When I do my brown rice, in order to get it nice and soft and it's not too chewy and not too nutty, I do 2 cups of uncooked with 4 cups of water and about a half a teaspoon of salt. And I find that it gives lovely, light, fluffy brown rice and it just gets away from that really chewy texture, which I'm not a fan of. For a long time I didn't like brown rice because of that texture, but when I added the extra water it made all the difference. So we'll be adding to this our lovely creamy peanut mixture and we'll be stirring that through. The peanuts are adding a delicious nutty flavour. Plus, peanuts are really high in iron, which makes sense because they are grown in very iron-rich soil. But they are also, little factoid, they are not a nut. They should really be called a pea legume, but it doesn't have the same ring to it. Pea legume butter. It's actually a legume, so there you go. Learned something new. That is our mixture now. We're going to set this aside and we're actually going to get our fry pan out now and we'll be frying up some onion and herbs and some breadcrumbs which will then be added into this mixture. All right, so now we have a medium-sized fry pan. You can do this on the stove. It's just easier for demonstration purposes to use the electric one. We will be adding 6 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. If you don't like extra virgin olive oil, you can use regular, but the flavour is so good. So we get 6 of those. 5, 6. I was hoping I wouldn't lose count and I didn't. Yay. Where will I put that? And we will add in 2 teaspoons of, heaped teaspoons of our minced garlic. If you have your own regular garlic, you can crush that up yourself. You can do that in the Thermomix as well. And we will add to that 2 medium onions and they're finely diced. I like to use a V-slicer to get them into those tiny little cubes. I find it saves a lot of time. Otherwise, just hand dice them and just keep chopping them until they're nice and small. And that way it spreads the onion flavour more evenly throughout your loaf. We'll be sautéing this mixture until the onion is soft. And then we'll be adding in 3 teaspoons of Italian herb mix and a teaspoon of salt, plus 1 cup of breadcrumbs. Now, a little note, while this is cooking, I'll explain about the herbs and about the breadcrumbs. Italian herbs, if you can't find an Italian herb mix at your shop or store, you can make your own. So what I did today is I had run out of my store-bought Italian herb mix. So I did 1.5 teaspoons of dried basil, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, and 1/2 teaspoon of dried sage. So that's the flavours for ours today. But yeah, have a look around, see what flavours you like to put in. Now with the breadcrumbs, ideally go for your whole wheat breadcrumbs. They can, however, be very difficult to find at the shops, and often the store-bought breadcrumbs contain fish. I know it's hard to believe it, it's just bread, but often they have fish in there. I don't know why, but they do. I have looked for years and never been able to find any store-bought brand that didn't, until the other day I went to Aldi and their breadcrumbs were vegan. Yay! So I was pretty excited. So I'm going to be using those ones today, but usually I actually make my own. So if I ever have any bread crusts that just don't end up being eaten, I save them all in the freezer until I've got a big bag full. Then I cook them in the oven until they're lovely and crispy, just on a low heat, maybe 150 degrees for say half an hour or an hour until they're really hard. Break them into pieces and I blend them up in the Thermomix, or you can blend them up in a regular blender, just pulse them until you're getting a nice fine breadcrumb. And then any extra ones you can keep in the fridge or the freezer in a Ziploc bag. And they're perfect for using as breadcrumbs, for crumbing the gluten steaks which are in the book, for putting into recipes like this and so on. So just thought you might like to know that. All right, our onion is looking great. So we'll add in, as I mentioned, a cup of breadcrumbs, 3 teaspoons of Italian herb mix, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And stir these together. And it's going to start to smell really good, especially with the breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs in this recipe act as a binder. So when you're vegan, you avoid eggs. And one of the things that eggs are very handy for is to hold things together. So if you cook a cake, you put a couple of eggs in. If you cook a loaf, you put a couple of eggs in. Or you cook pancakes, put a couple of eggs in. But when you're vegan, you don't want the eggs. So what we do is, for instance, in this rice loaf, we have the breadcrumbs. They like to hold it together. In pancakes, you can actually just leave them out all together, and as long as you're gentle when you're flipping them, they'll hold together without the egg. In cakes, you can do the same by leaving the egg out completely, or add a banana that helps to bind as well. And also potato is a really good binder, and potato starch, tapioca flour, there are quite a few options. But anyhow, in this recipe, it's the breadcrumbs that binds it. Let me have a smell. Smells so good. All right, we'll go 1 more minute to really toast up those breadcrumbs. And then we'll be stirring this in with our other carrot peanut mixture. Now, a couple more things to note while I'm stirring. Make sure you're preheating your oven to 200 degrees Celsius. And you'll need to have a prepared baking dish. I will show you how to prepare it with some baking paper, but you can also oil it instead of using baking paper if you prefer. And make sure you've got those things ready to go, so then it's all straight in the oven after the pieces are all ready, all the bits and pieces. Okay, that's good. So turn your fry pan off, and now we're going to transfer into our bowl. Obviously do it carefully because it's really hot. This carrot rice loaf is a favourite, especially served with the golden gravy from the cookbook. It is just a perfect combination. So if you're considering trying this out, you'll want to have a gravy on hand to add in. I want to get those last little bits. All right, very good. Now that we have our Italian herbs and breadcrumb mixture combined in the bowl with our carrot and peanut mixture, stir it through really well. You can't overstir it. Just make sure, particularly, that you've got those breadcrumbs throughout. As I mentioned before, they are the binding agent. If you don't do that, parts of your rice loaf will want to fall apart when you serve it. Okay, so stir that through really well. Okay, so that's your finished product, and what we're going to do now is prepare our pan And we'll pop that in there and get it into the oven. Just the same as you do when you're lining your bread tins for making bread. Once again, we'll be doing the same with our baking dish. It's a medium-sized baking dish. I usually put a little bit of oil to help hold the baking paper on, so I'll leave that there for now. You want to measure the bottom of your baking dish. With this oil that's in there, just spread it around on the baking paper like this. It just helps to hold the baking paper in place. Let's see how that goes. That'll be the way. There we go. Just acts like a bit of a sticking agent there. Let's see if we can utilize some of these extra little bits. Okay. Let's get this carrot rice loaf poured into our baking dish now, our lined baking dish. I was going to say put it all in, but I think you should more say something like slop it in, because it's very sloppy. But that's the way it's supposed to be. Let's give my hands a rinse off. All right, using the back of your wooden spoon or spatula, if you're using a spatula, flatten out the rice loaf. Number one, looks prettier. Number two, your loaf will cook evenly. If you have too much on one side, that side will be uncooked, the other side will be too crispy, and so on. If you wanted to, you can try with a little less oil. I have at times tried to do that and I just find that the result is not as good. So I actually stick with the 6 tablespoons. But as you can see, it makes a really lovely sized loaf. This is a great one to share with your friends. So we will now put that into the oven for 1 hour at 200 degrees Celsius. Once it's lovely and brown on top, you bring it out and we'll slice it up and give you an idea of what it looks like. Here we go. Doesn't it look nice? Now let's slice it up. Okay. Make it look pretty. Some oregano. Oh, voila. Carrot rice loaf. We like to serve this with the golden gravy from the cookbook and also a green garden salad on the side. And if you're feeling really hungry and you want to add a bit of potato to the side, it goes really nicely with the homemade baked chips as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this recipe today and I hope that you will subscribe to our channel and click like. Please share the video with your friends and we will see you next time.